Peninsula to do user testing next month. We're going to share data. So these are the kinds of partnerships that we're building moving forward. Pill phone was a great one that we did with George Washington University and Qualcomm, where it was just basically a pill reminder, but it was a double-blind test with intervention. Well, it can't be double-blind, but it was a no intervention and intervention test with 1,200 people, I think. It clearly showed that people who had a pill phone text reminder took their pills on time, but it also showed that when the intervention stopped, they also stopped taking their pills on time. So it was really interesting, kind of moving us into that applications for good space. And then I just threw this on this morning because we just launched in San Diego yesterday. We launched another housing development. KPBS is the public radio, public television station there. And now this is a new way that we're communicating with our users. KPBS, please send me more details for senior housing. Is this for people on Section 8 or is this for any family? The actual writer of the staff responded and said, okay, well, we've spoken to One Economy. We're going to find out for you what this is about. So this is a totally, convoluted way of them finding out about our services. I think this is what's going to be happening more and more in the media realm. A couple questions that arise for me are now, are we beholden to Comcast and Walmart and these companies? That's what I want to ask of you guys, maybe to get our conversation started. Where is the borderline? What kind of boundaries are we pushing? The other thing, I was wondering about research. It seems like scholarly research is a lot of times extracted, and then you're pushing it out to public and policy, but it's not additive back to the community in a lot of times that I've seen. And then my question about, do researchers have to become accidental producers? Are we all becoming multimedia folks? And global relationships, I think, is just a natural output. So that should get us started, right?
You can see why this is exciting for us. It connects a whole lot of the themes that we've been working on for some years. In particular, it helps us think about that social innovation that I know that you thought about on the first day and understand why that's of interest within the CCI context. So I've invited Joe Tacky and Robert Massillo just to have a couple of remarks about fabulous things that Arthur's been able to tell us about what One Economy does. Joe, do you want to talk first? Just a little brief thing.
Robert's more proud than me, but I want to go first.
Happy to.
Yeah, Robert, you've got first.
Terrific and stimulating and really great stuff. I've just got three brief ones. My outline is sort of the big picture conceptual stuff, the problem and then solutions. And I want to finish with a quote. I think social innovation or social enterprise, social entrepreneurship, to me there's some of the interesting questions about what's going on and where is the actual innovation and so on. And I mean, I'm sort of interested in Christensen, the disruptive technology sort of, and whether catalytic innovations versus incremental innovations and those sorts of things. And Christian's, his definition is catalytic innovation. Social innovation is about sustainable social change, which I'm pretty sure, obviously, you guys are on about. So to me, it's a bit of a nomenclature thing. It's a bit of, where is the actual innovation plus sustainable innovation? That leads to all sorts of questions, which I'll just get to in a minute. So lots of good research types of questions in there, it seems to me. And there's also interesting public policy questions because the Productivity Commission last year released a report about the importance for third sector, non-government organisations and social innovation, basically to be more productive and reduce government expenditure. But hey, you could at least sort of say, well, maybe there's ways of solving wicked problems or meeting unmet needs and all those sorts of things. The social innovation thing, it's starting to get up there in terms of Australian public policy, hopefully, and more focus on that. And so that's good. So it's really in there. The second sort of thing is this, to me anyway, the digital divide versus digital inclusion, digital citizenship, information for everyone. That's sort of, that debate in one sense has been over for quite a while, namely that just to give access with computers is nowhere near enough and never going to work. And so the role of content, and I think of Ellie's and project as well, the domestication of technology. How do people actually get to use it? And I feel a bit embarrassed, but this whole thing of digital divide, it's sort of an old hat sort of way of talking about things, but the NBN really does raise the issue again, and I agree, because if you take one end of that divide and move it this way, in other words, everybody in the cities and all that get 100 megabits per second and so on, or up to a gigabit, and can have it and they can afford to have it and so on. Well, guess what? The divide has actually become greater, even if people at this end of socio-demographics or whatever don't actually move. So those issues still arise, it seems to me. So again, that's public policy issues about demand-side attention, which have not yet got great traction, at least in the NBN debates in Australia. And I think obviously the work that Ellie's doing, and hopefully some of the stuff I'm trying to do, will inform that. And I think that's that's obviously part and parcel of what's happening in one community and what they're trying to contribute. Issues of affordability, but it's beyond affordability. Issues of accessibility, it's beyond accessibility. Availability, it's beyond availability. It's much more than just those sorts of things. And that's where HAS research, CCI, all that sort of stuff really has an opportunity. And then in that space, again, is this whole issue of wireless versus fixed. It's not just broadband, it's what type of broadband. And there may be lots of issues that impact or have regulatory and public policy issues about if you're poor, etc., you only have wireless, which is great because it's becoming a lot cheaper and accessible and all those sorts of things, and you can carry it around with you. But those who've got fixed will have a different type of broadband, NBN, and it'll do all sorts of other things. So there's, again, this divide question versus inclusion and all that sort of thing. And it just really, really intrigues me that, the NBN itself could be unbelievably disrupted by this whole sort of mobile shared mesh type, so a housing block of 100 things where they would hope for 70 out of those 100 people to have their own connections. If you've got one connection that's being shared by 100 households, that could be disruptive, and the rest are using, Anyway, so what type of broadband? And the third one is the institutional interest, the role of not-for-profits, NGOs, third sector, whatever we want to call it. There's a big EU report just very recently, last week, I think, about the role and of the inclusion by third sector, and they talk about that very positively. There's the Productivity Commission I mentioned report last year, etc. But on the other hand, there's a recent departmental report, DBCDE, Broadband Digital Economy report, on the first NBN areas, in other words, those areas which are now quite NBN sort of thing, and it's about the businesses and the community organisations in those areas. And guess what? Community organisations, to a T, haven't got the time, haven't got the funding, not interested, blah, 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 blah. So to me, that's a problem, that's an issue, or, we need, their role and their participation in the innovation space and doing the sorts of things that you guys are really tackling is really, to me, quite important to have a think about and so on. I get the impression that they see business as usual as the approach to their sustainability rather than the innovation, social innovation as an approach to sustainability. So again, good HAS questions in all of that sort of stuff. And that raises the issue with collaboration between academic business, NGOs, can you get win-win, and those boundary issues you sort of talk about. Innovation from difference and diversity, so exploring those sorts of things. Corporate citizenship debates in the business world, where the other half of me sort of sits at the moment as well. And policy implications. For example, their department is going to review the Australian Communications Consumer Action Network in the next few months. And so for me, it's quite interesting as to whether they engage in the different, across sectors and all sorts of stuff. So big picture, environment, conceptual, SI, SE, SE. The problem, digital inclusion, citizenship, participation, contribution, accidental solutions. And this is, to me, is, because when I started in the community sector, I've been in corporate for the last 15 years, now trying out in the academic. The solutions bit, actually, from my experience, are actually coming from these sorts of, this is where the solutions are starting to be talked about. We're not back there or there, do you know what I mean? So this is really, really great stuff and inspiring for me. Finally, the quote is one of the Terrys, and I forget which one it was, I think it was Terry Cutler. He quoted Keating saying, any galah in the pet shop can squawk about the problems, but what does it take to get people involved in the solutions? So I think that's a really apt, basically summarises one community for me. You're getting involved in solutions and doing that cross-sectorally and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, that's my comments.
Do you want to come back?
No.
Okay, so I just want to say maybe 3 things. So the first thing, yes, so the first thing, you talked about the ability to iterate, and I think that is actually a really, really interesting position that One Economy takes, and really fascinating in the realm of sort of social innovation or community development or international development. Because one of the real challenges when you're trying to do development work or applied research, that is, trying to help people to achieve their aims, is the resistance to talking about or acknowledging failure. So you're not using the word failure, which is also very wise, but the whole idea that you can learn through failure and you can talk about it through having this approach called the ability to iterate is absolutely fantastic. And I just commend you because, I mean, it's the sort of thing that, the people that I work with would be able to engage with the discussion about how they are flexible and iterative, whereas they cannot engage with discussions about how they fail because they're so dependent on funding and donor funding. So that's the first thing that I want to say.
Can I respond to that one directly? I definitely, I think, a little more attuned to it because of I've worked across so many different departments. Publicly, we don't really come out of, there's no press release about how that didn't work, right? It's always about what did work and that. And I would say I'm probably aligned with about 30 to 40% of the organization. And then also with our new leadership, there's a huge emphasis on transparency from kind of the executive team. So even people, I'm in kind of this small little department with a few people on the side. We're getting the strategy documents as they're being produced. We have access to the funder database to see who we're going to for money and things like that, which is really important when you're trying to run your own department because I don't want to be knocking on someone's door if we're already talking to them or whatever. So I think it's a movement that's happening partially because of internet technology and partially because of the kind of the innovation theory that is realizing that, yeah, we do have to network and make mistakes and be flexible.
I mean, it sounds like the organisation, that is how the organisation works, even if that's not, even if you can't talk about failure, you learn from it. There's a way of feeding back and not being too overly dependent on what you're expected to do. So, I mean, to me, that's really interesting. It's a really interesting sort of case study, if you like, in how to overcome that problem for the sector, if you like.
It is a great case study, One Economy. The problem is research can barely keep up with the range and rapidity of the change within organisations and things you're doing. And we've been tracking it for a couple of years. But it sounds like you've got some partial connection to researchers, but no one who's working with you on each of these initiatives, much less the whole picture.
Yeah, definitely no one who's working on the way we're doing our things, mostly specifically on project basis. Let's look at this app or let's look at this intervention.
Sheila, do you want to quickly?
Oh no, I just wanted to ask a question after if that's when you're ready.
I reckon we can shoot on.
Can I just
Do you have
make
two more?
a suggestion? Well, I'll be really quick. So the focus on listening, also really interesting, resonates with a lot of my work at the moment. And what I think is really another thing that's really important to try and do from the example of One Economy is to describe the processes of listening that you have discovered that work and that are effective, because they are really useful and valuable for other agencies and organisations. So that's one recommendation I would make in terms of research. Well, both of those things, how you do the sort of, learning from things that don't work and how you do the listening.